Welcome to the Daily Recap. The United States government's own watchdog just announced it is going to investigate how the Justice Department handled the release of Jeffrey Epstein's files. Let that sink in. The feds are investigating the feds over one of the most explosive and sensitive document releases in recent memory. So here is the question we are asking today. What are they actually trying to hide? And will we ever get the full truth about Jeffrey Epstein? Here is exactly what went down. The Department of Justice's Office of the Inspector General, which is essentially the internal watchdog that keeps tabs on how the DOJ operates, announced it will formally review the processes the department used when identifying, redacting, and releasing records related to Jeffrey Epstein. This is not a criminal investigation. At least not yet. This is a procedural review, meaning the watchdog wants to know whether the DOJ followed the right steps when it handed over documents that the public and various legal teams have been demanding for years. The announcement came amid intense public pressure and scrutiny following recent document releases that many people found incomplete, heavily redacted, or just flat out unsatisfying. Critics from both sides of the political aisle have argued that the releases felt managed, filtered, and carefully curated in a way that protected powerful people rather than exposed them. The Inspector General's office specifically stated it would evaluate the DOJ's processes for identifying, redacting, and releasing records in its possession as required by law. That phrase, as required by law, is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. It signals that the watchdog believes there may have been failures to comply with legal obligations around transparency and public disclosure. This review is happening right now, in real time, and we will be tracking every development as it unfolds. Okay, so why should you, sitting at home, care about a government watchdog reviewing some paperwork processes? Because this is so much bigger than paperwork. Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted sex offender who trafficked and abused dozens of young women and girls over decades. He had connections to some of the most powerful people on earth, from politicians to royals to business executives. He died in a federal detention facility in August 2019, under circumstances that were officially ruled a suicide, but that millions of people, including forensic experts, have questioned loudly and publicly. The documents surrounding his case, his associates, his victims, and the networks he operated within represent one of the most significant accountability opportunities in modern American history. When those documents are released with chunks blacked out or are handed over in ways that seem designed to protect certain names, real people are being failed. The survivors of Epstein's abuse deserve a full accounting. The public deserves to know whether powerful individuals were protected by institutions that were supposed to serve justice. And here is the thing that makes this even more urgent right now. Trust in American institutions is at a historic low. When the government's own watchdog steps in and says we need to look at how these records were handled, it sends a signal that even insiders are not confident the process was clean. That matters enormously for how ordinary citizens relate to the justice system. If the review finds that the DOJ improperly redacted names or slow-walked releases to protect connected individuals, the fallout could be massive. It could trigger congressional hearings, it could accelerate lawsuits, and it could force the release of materials that certain very powerful people would very much prefer stayed buried. To understand why this moment is so charged, you need to know how we got here. Jeffrey Epstein was first arrested in 2006 in Florida. In 2008, a deal brokered by then-prosecutor Alexander Acosta gave Epstein a shockingly lenient sentence, just 13 months with work release privileges, for crimes that prosecutors later admitted should have carried far harsher punishment. That deal, which was struck in secret and kept from Epstein's victims in violation of federal law, became a massive scandal on its own. Epstein was arrested again in July 2019 on federal sex trafficking charges. He died on August 10, 2019, in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York. The guards assigned to monitor him were asleep. The cameras outside his cell malfunctioned. He was found dead, and the official cause was ruled suicide by hanging. Since then, civil lawsuits brought by survivors have generated mountains of court documents. Some of those documents have been released in batches over the past few years, and each release has prompted intense public interest and intense frustration at what remains hidden. Names like Ghislaine Maxwell, who was convicted in 2021 and is now serving 20 years in federal prison, are central to the ongoing story, but many alleged co-conspirators and clients have never faced any charges or even public naming. The pressure to release the full files has been bipartisan and relentless, and it is that pressure that has now forced the Inspector General to act. So where does this go from here? The Inspector General's review does not have a fixed deadline, but these reviews typically take months and sometimes longer. The findings will be published in a report that becomes public, which means whatever the watchdog discovers, we will eventually hear about it. Legal experts who follow these kinds of reviews say the most significant outcome would be if the IG finds that specific redactions were made not for legitimate legal reasons, but to shield identities of powerful individuals. If that finding lands, it creates enormous pressure on the DOJ to release unredacted materials and opens the door to potential disciplinary action or referrals. On the congressional side, lawmakers have already been pushing for more disclosure, and this review gives them fresh ammunition to demand answers. Expect hearings, expect subpoenas, expect a lot of very uncomfortable testimony. And for Epstein survivors, this review is one more step in a long, exhausting fight for acknowledgement and accountability. Their advocates are cautiously optimistic but have been burned before. Here is the bottom line. The DOJ Watchdog is now investigating how the Justice Department handled the Epstein files. This is a huge deal. It signals that the fight for full transparency is not over and that powerful forces are still working to contain what the public gets to know. We will be covering every single update on this story as it breaks. If you want to stay informed, like this video, subscribe to the Daily Recap and hit the bell so you never miss a thing. The truth matters. We will keep chasing it.